one of the really important things that we want to hear tonight is how these candidates differ on education. It's a little more nuanced than some of these questions might even give you an opportunity to know, but I think what we're hoping that UCSA members and everyone will come away with is what the differences are in your thinking in education. And so we're going to start with a 2-minute, or do you have to say one candidate who's missing? He might be out shopping for a suit. I'm not sure. John TDs is not with us tonight. So Chris Quinn is right here, and she's going to go first, and she is going to have our full 2 minutes and no longer.
Well, thank you very much, Liz. Thank you, and Pedro, and thank you, everybody at Farouk and CSA for organizing tonight's forum. And you know, the issues we're going to discuss tonight around education are, as Liz said, some of the most important that the next mayor are going to have to face. Because the truth is, the access to the middle class in this city can only happen if people have a quality education. You know, my grandparents came here from Ireland with most of them no education at all. And my one grandfather had 3rd grade education, ended up a battalion chief. The other, about the same, ended up a successful bus driver. Because for them, the path to the middle class was about hard work alone. That's not the case anymore. It takes hard work and education. And when I was growing up, my folks told me, my sister and I, we could be anything we wanted to be as long as we did well in school. And that's the truth. And to make that reality possible for more New York City school teachers, we need to make sure education stays one of our top priorities. That's why I've been so proud as speaker over the past 7 years to focus successfully on things like expanding full-day pre-kindergarten seats by 4,000 slots, by working with CSA and other support last year to get Albany to make kindergarten finally mandatory in the 5 boroughs, by doing things like working collaboratively with the CSA, with UFT, with advocates like Pedro Noguera, and putting in place a task force report that had a roadmap for our worst.
But that also requires some real improvements in our economy and in the state budget dynamics. I think the question, again, if you had a mayor who was not taking a negative attitude towards the workforce, meaning the principals and the teachers and the paras and everyone else, you could ask the question, how could we use our staff creatively in combination to try and reduce class size, or at least reduce the burden of large class size in some situations. But I think it's a combination of short-term new revenue that strengthens the school system through tax increase on the wealthiest, long-term getting the justice long since promised us by the CFE decision.
Thank you.
Can I add something real quick to that?
Tom had his hand up first, and we'll get to you next.
I was a teacher 25 years ago at Stuyvesant High School, and I had 35 kids in each of my classes 5 times a day. Remembering 175 names is next to impossible without a Delaney book, if you remember what that was. We need to bring class size down. That's going to require us to make sure that we get more teachers, and we need to keep and retain teachers. 50% of teachers in this city turn over within 5 years. That is educational malpractice as far as I'm concerned. We have to force the schools of education to have a medical model to train teachers and get them in the classroom as apprentice teachers and bolster our system. The second thing is we have to, as I said before, increase our facilities and improve our facilities with more seats so that we can reduce class sizes. Those 2 things will bring it down. And with all due respect to Bill, it's not about taxing the wealthy, because that base is just going to leave the city and we're going to have no taxes at that point.
All right, thank you.
That's highly debatable, whenever you want to have that debate.
We'll have time to come back to that in your closing remarks. John,
I'll meet you outside for that one, Tom.
John, if you want, very briefly, want to make sure we get to another topic.
Sure. The increasing class sizes is a very big problem, I would say crisis for our public schools now. Over recent years, class sizes has continued to creep up and up and up. The idea that we don't have enough money to reduce class sizes I think it's just a non-starter. We have seen over the last few days the administration basically give up on $250 million of money for the Department of Education this year, ballooning to something like $772 million by September 1st if the evaluation system is not agreed upon by the Bloomberg administration. So there's lots, and their solution is not to plug the $250 million gap in the Department of Education with money elsewhere, or to ask for it from the state, but it's simply to have the Department of Education itself absorb that loss from within. So clearly, if they can do that so easily, there is lots of other money to be found within the department. My office has
John, I'm
looked at
sorry.
All right. Hundreds of millions of dollars of consulting fees that probably should go to classroom sizes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So before we go there, I gotta go to teacher evaluation. This is
Clear instructions, clear understanding of what the goals are. So I am dubious about whether this current network structure can be kept. I very much think we found a lot of good in a superintendent structure, in a district structure. We have to find a way to do a new version of that.
John.
Did you disagree, Tom?
I mean, listen, there has to be oversight, there's no doubt about that. But we have to really trust our principals and empower them. And we also have to make sure that principals don't become just simple building managers, which is what many of them have unfortunately become. They have to be instructional leaders. The assistant principal perhaps can be the building manager. But instructional leaders inspire teachers and give oversight to teachers. And that's the restructuring that has to happen. Oversight from a faceless superintendent, which, again, important on some level, but it's in the school that we have to make sure that we empower principals.
Adrian, if I could just clarify just something that Bill had said. I think that there is real logic to geographic structure. But I've also heard from schools that like the network they're in, and I've heard from a lot of schools and parents that don't like the network they're in. We don't want to fix what isn't broken. And if there is a network out there, say like New Visions, that's working, it's not our job to rip a school out of that and put them into somewhere else. But when we're hearing geographically from networks from neighborhoods that they want to be in a geographic, let's put that back in, but leave an option for those that want to stay in their network to stay in it if it is working. I think that's listening to parents, it's listening to teachers, and it's listening to principals, and that's critical to making our system succeed.
Thank you. Want to get another?
Do you want to?
Okay, well, go ahead.
Very quick. I understand. I obviously believe if something's working, we need to preserve it, but that's not what I'm saying. We've got 12 years of legacy we're going to have to figure out how to deal with here. And you heard all of us say some of what happened in the Bloomberg years was commendable and should be kept, but a lot of us think a lot needs to change. If we don't have a clear vision of what a new system looks like from the beginning of the next term, the current reality will lag for quite a while. So although yes, there may be some networks that work and there's a way to do it, if we just explore districts, as you said, Speaker, it's not enough to explore. We have to find a way to make the district reality work again starting January 2014 or shortly thereafter, because that will empower a lot of parents, a lot of principals, a lot of teachers.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to a different topic, another controversial one, subject of charter schools. And as you know, the number of charter schools in the city has grown dramatically in the Bloomberg years. And one of the issues of great controversy has been co-location. What's your position on co-location? Tom, why don't you give us a start?
First of all, charter schools, when they were first conceived many years ago, were supposed to be laboratories for reform. I think we've lost sight of that fact. Charter schools can serve an important function. There's one that just opened in Brooklyn last year that takes kids who've dropped out of schools and it teaches them sports careers, whether it's officiating or coaching. And that's what you can do in a charter school, which you can't necessarily do in a traditional school. Co-location is, I think, a needless polarity that we have right now. Yes, we need to utilize school buildings and make sure that we give charter schools the space that they deserve. But if we don't make sure that we set up a system where the principal of both of those schools in the same building work collaboratively, and the parent associations don't work collaboratively, then we're setting up a polarity that's not necessary, that's not conducive to education, and charter schools should be beacons for helping the schools that they co-locate with or other schools and not become the enemy. And that's what unfortunately has happened in this environment.
So can I force you to add yes, no? Would you continue to support co-location?
I would continue to support co-location, but with the caveat that they have to work collaboratively. If money goes into the charter school, it is shared with the public school in that building. It is not just for that charter school.
I absolutely don't agree that
Go ahead, John.
the co-location should continue. I think there are two separate issues, charters and co-location. Charters, we shouldn't lump all charter schools in the same category. There are certain community-grown charter schools that I think make very much sense and work well within the community that they serve. Some of the networks of charter schools that are almost bordering on for-profit organizations, I think they have much less of a place in our system of education here in New York City. But the idea of co-locations is something that it's just painful It's painful for the parents, the students, the teachers, the administrators, the principals, and the surrounding community. The co-location crisis has grown tensions to untenable levels in many communities where they are just detrimental to the educational learning environment that we want in our schools. You know, my son is in the 7th grade in public school, and throughout his entire years, from kindergarten through the current 7th grade that he's in, he's been in a school that's been co-located with other schools. In some cases, his school was considered the invading school. In other cases, his school was considered the defending school. Why does any school in the city of New York have to have that kind of mentality, that they're considered the invaders or the defenders? It's just not right.
All right. Let's get Bill DeBasso and Bill Hunt.
And another thing that has to change starting January is that Eva Moskowitz cannot continue to have the run. This is documented. I have worked, unfortunately in my case, I've had a lot of contact with Eva over the years, and this is documented. She was giving the orders and chancellors were bowing down and agreeing. That's not acceptable. I am someone who believes, like John Liu, there's some charters that work and there's some charters that have contributed. But we need a situation where just because someone's politically connected and has a lot of money behind them, they don't tell the public school system what to do. That doesn't work for New York City.
Bill Johnson.
I support charter schools. However, what we are seeing across the city of New York in co-location are, in one side of the school, it's bright, there's technology, it's airy, it's painted, it looks good. And on the other side of the school, it is after children are in a different city, they're being treated as second-class citizens. That can't continue. So it is important, if you're going to say we're going to co-locate a charter school in a building, it's the Department of Education's responsibility to make sure that additional resources go to the other part of the school so that there is fairness and equity for those children. We have to make sure that happens.
Chris, before you answer, I just want to add that while the co-location of charter and public schools have come up, or at least traditional public schools, there are a lot of traditional public schools that are also co-located that are not playing well together and that are squabbling over the cafeteria and gym, etc. So if you could address that larger issue of sharing space in New York City.
Because the truth is that most of the co-locations are district schools, not district charter schools out there in our city. Let me first start with the question of charters. I also support charter schools, and to have charter schools, you have to have co-locations. That said, you know a system isn't working when both the proponents and the opponents say it's not working. So I would continue co-locations, but we need to have a consistent, transparent process that is the same in every neighborhood, in every building, for every operator around co-locations. Now the challenge around districts can be just as hard. I saw it in my district with PS11 and the Clinton Middle School for Writers and Artists, two terrific schools that existed together fabulously for a long time. Nobody, in my opinion, at the Department of Education monitored the growth of either school, and like